Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and hello. This is a special presentation brought to you by Elijah Smith for the proprietors, general managers, executive chefs, and anyone else in between for Bayberry Garden. My original plan showing this presentation of my evaluation of Bayberry Garden was originally meant to be recorded, but unfortunately the original recording was never able to be brought to fruition. So I bring you this special recording after a 14-hour lab day at Johnson & Wales for the explicit viewing purposes of Bayberry Garden faculty. Now, I do this because, as you may see in this presentation and garner from the 10-page paper that I wrote on my evaluation, they don't necessarily coincide with the amount of information, because a lot of the information I was able to orate to the class was just that. It was a lot of oration. So I bring you this so I am able to properly express the full experience of what this evaluation was. So I don't have a clicker, I did not bring it today, but so pardon me for going off screen a couple of times, but here we go. The evaluation of Bayberry Garden by Elijah Smith. So, talking about my role in what this evaluation was, this was a 40-hour evaluation for my 4001 sustainability class, Cultivating Local Food Systems, in which I was tasked to go to a food service restaurant within the local Rhode Island food system and evaluate their sustainability in terms of three categories: economic, environmental, and social cultural, which are relatively the same thing. Now, normally my role in Bayberry Garden is that of a Grand Marché line cook, operating the raw bar, cold line, producing cold items and things of that nature. But this caused my role to shift into a more data analysis, evaluation, and sort of sensory analysis in terms of what is being sustainable and what's not, if that makes sense. I was observing, I was able to interview, and I was able to measure a lot of things to get some more concrete information on what was occurring in the restaurant, both sustainable and not. My purpose was to provide the restaurant, the executive chef, the general manager, the operators, whomever, with a general evaluation on where they are in terms of their level of sustainability. And I was fairly confident in that, and I was able to use my 40 hours fairly efficiently to make sure that that goal was met. Now, an introduction into Bayberry Garden itself. This is the big sister restaurant to Bayberry Beer Hall, established in 2016. Bayberry Garden opened this year, June 2021, and it's the second restaurant of Bayberry Group. And the focus of the cuisine is really regional upper casual, focusing on the Rhode Island food system and what it has to offer and showcase. There's a huge emphasis on local ingredients, utilizing local farms, partnering with local farmers and co-ops and even distilleries, as we'll get on into later with our robust beverage program that's showcased at the restaurant. Now, just a basic overview into operations. As an upper casual restaurant, the average guest check is estimated to be around $55. And what's very interesting about this operation is the beverage to food mix is almost even, with around 55% of the guest check expected to be based on food, and then the other 45% based on beverages. And such an even percentage is usually not seen, but Bayberry Garden focuses very heavily on the beverage aspect of the restaurant. There is a robust beverage program focusing on a highly selective wine list featuring very diverse biodynamic winemakers. And this is evident in how the restaurant is operated. The front and back of house are almost equal in terms of their importance in a restaurant, which should be the outcome of every restaurant, but if you've been to any restaurant, that usually isn't the case. Usually one carries more than the other, which is unfortunate, but is a wonder to see in a restaurant so new and vibrant like Bayberry Garden. They're open 6 days a week, closed on Mondays, and usually around this time, the slower season, we're expecting around 100 and 75 on a good weekend, 75 for an average weekday, with that number being around 50% more during the summer months. Not only is it busier, but there's also a patio open, which I believe opens around 50 seats for the restaurant. Now, talking in general about back of house sustainability, a quote from Chef Mike Seeley: "We use as many ingredients as humanly possible in the restaurant." And it's a testament to the power of the Rhode Island food system. There is such a diverse variety to be offered. And when it's available and when it's economical, you take yourself up on that offer, you meet local farmers, you form those connections, and you showcase local ingredients. You showcase the power of staying within the local food system. Farms within the Rhode Island and Southern Massachusetts food system are emphasized, and high amounts of cross-utility are being seen throughout the menu. One of the most prevalent things, I think, that is a testament to this cross-utility is the Ora King salmon, which is featured on at least 4 menu items. And this is a picture of an Ora King salmon, certainly not our chef Mike Seeley. However, you get the idea. This is a huge fish hailing from New Zealand, and not only is it sustainably farmed, but it's used sustainably in the restaurant, with the collars and tails being used as a nightly special to make sure that there is as little waste as possible. I believe the percent yield on the salmon is above 95%, because you're using the scraps and the trimmings and what cuts would usually be thrown away as specials to help cover the costs of the salmon. It pays for itself, essentially. You're having mirepoix being reused for stock and such things like that. And then your pastry chefs are reusing bread for bread puddings or bread crumbs or something else, bread for sandwiches for the next day for the savory menu, things like that. Now, moving on to a general front of house sustainability, we're using paper to-go containers that are recyclable. We're using hay straws, which are compostable. And we're using efficient glass washing. So this means 2 things. 1, there is going to be no load of dishes that is not completely 100% full. We don't do 95, we don't do 85, we don't do 50%. If it is not 100% full, it doesn't go in, and that saves water. You don't want to waste water at all. And that's also evident in the cocktails. One of our signature cocktails, the oyster martini, is frozen so that there is no need for shaking. It comes frozen, and then that's one less need for water. No cans, only recyclable glass bottles coming from Yacht Club in Rhode Island, and then an in-house water filtration and carbonation system, which cuts the need for bringing in sparkling water from an outside distiller or from an outside source, which cuts down on your transportation costs, as well as cuts down on potential transportation emissions that might have been brought as a negative externality, something that happens just because it happens. It's an unintended consequence, and that's completely eliminated with this in-house carbonation system. Now, talking about beverage sustainability, something that not a lot of people have heard of, is very prevalent in the restaurant, very prevalent in the beverage program offered by Bayberry Garden. A highly cross-utilized cocktail menu is being seen. With that oyster martini I've been talking about is a wonderful showcase using old oyster shells being infused with vermouth to create this wonderful sustainable cocktail, which isn't something that people normally think of, but it's ingenuity and things like that that's what makes Bayberry Garden such a unique restaurant, forging a new path for Providence's sustainability scene. A biodynamic wine program. I was able to spend 2 to 3 hours interviewing the general manager, Kelsey, who's also the resident sommelier, and she, I'm sure, could spend hours upon hours about biodynamic wine. I was only able to get a glimpse of that, but from what I garnered, it was this step beyond being an organic farmer, which most wine producers already are. They may not be certified, but most wine farmers and cultivators are usually operating under some organic practices. Biodynamic takes it a step further in the direction of sustainability. Small spirit and liquor selections, with I believe only 30 to 40 liquors and spirits being offered on tap. So those 30 to 40 are highly influential into what people are buying, and those 30 to 40 need to be sourced correctly, with as many as possible being local. Big feature being the Industrious Spirits Company, who has recently come out with an oyster martini that was, I believe, inspired by Bayberry Garden's efforts to be sustainable, as well as sustainable with their use of oyster shells. And cocktail mise en place is done in-house to reduce waste whenever possible. When you're doing your mise en place in-house, then you have 100% control of what you're doing. Low waste cocktails, and you have the control of your input materials. Now, energy sustainability is something interesting and something that took a little bit of research to do and took a lot of observation. But it was interesting to see that, like I said, all dishwashers were only used when full loads were present. And because the machinery has gotten to such a level where it is advanced and strong enough to wipe away any grime and dirt and dust without the need for a rinse, that's one less place where you can cut your water. And that's less water that you're wasting. Sustainable chemicals. Ecolab has recently come out with new sustainable chemicals that are being more eco-friendly and less harmful to the environment in terms of their production and their waste. And then house lights are usually only turned on a half an hour before service, with the back of house lights being on for illumination in the back during the early prep hours. But house lights usually only come on, I'd say, around a half an hour before service starts. Floor-to-ceiling walls provide ambient heating as well as a beautiful aesthetic for the restaurant. It's a double feature that works in the summer for lower heating costs and works in the winter on those sunny days, so you don't have to worry as much about heating the restaurant and spending that money on heat energy. And then that's less energy you have to purchase and less energy wasted. The plancha grill and rationale oven are usually only turned on with enough time to preheat them. So that's more energy you're saving. You're not walking into the restaurant, turning on your plancha and your grill, and then not worrying about it or cooking on it for the next hour or two, like some restaurants do. It is turn on, wait for it to preheat, and you're going. Now, talking about some unsustainable practices, there is a lack of composting, but for good reason. Unfortunately, the building that the restaurant is housed in does not allow for composting, and we'll get into how we can stray away from that and go into an alternative direction when we talk about our solutions to the Bayberry Garden unsustainable practices. We're having excessive ice usage with around 200 pounds of ice between the front of house and back of house being burned every day. Now, not only is that a waste of ice, in addition, it's also a waste of hot water. You need to burn that ice with hot water, which I'm sure probably wastes around another 50 gallons a day. Paper menus are being used, and with the menu frequently changing, you have to print new menus. I'm sure once every week, once every couple of weeks, whatever the menu change schedule may be, you have to print new menus and your old menus become obsolete. However, something that's really interesting about that is, in my experience and my observations, I've seen the swap from cloth, sort of papery underliners to old menus being used as underliners, which is a beautiful usage of unwanted paper goods and is a very smart, witty, and sustainable practice done by the restaurant. Large format meat items. I believe of the 3 or 4 large format items, I will say I think at least 75% of them are meat. One is a vegetable platter, and I don't believe any are fish as of my last checking of the menu. I could be wrong on that. But something to make that a little bit more sustainable, switch it out for another veggie option, switch in some local fish, something like that to be a more sustainable option. That's not pork or beef or chicken. And we're having a high volume of product coming from a commercial purveyor, and while you can't avoid that, you can try to switch where it is economical, and that's another problem with sustainability sometimes. It may be sustainable, but sometimes it's simply not economical when you want to keep your profits in line. And we're having a moderate amount of food waste in the restaurant in general, which could be ameliorated or sort of leveled out by compost, but as we said, it's just not happening in the building. Now, talking about how we can change these things to be better for the restaurant going forward, let's talk about environmental. Let's reuse the ice to water our garden, and let's not melt it with hot water. Let's melt it with the ambient temperature of the restaurant and the air around us. Leave it overnight, however much you need, 50 or so gallons. maybe not that much. That might be a little extreme depending on what the needs are. However, don't waste energy that you don't need to waste. And at the very least, if you're gonna melt your ice because you have no use for it, melt it ambiently. Find somewhere where there is no one being bothered by the extra ice overnight, and then whoever comes in the next morning dumps out the ice so it doesn't have to be burned using excess water, excess energy, and that's one small thing that you can do that's not wasting energy, but does take up a little bit of space. Now, partner with a biodiesel program for oil disposal. Around, I believe, estimated 200 pounds of oil are being cycled through the fryer each week. And something that you could do that might be an economic incentive as well is send it to or partner with a biodiesel program which will pick up the oil and provide you with some sort of small economic incentive for that oil. They will turn it into biodiesel, which provides them with a more sustainable fuel option, and the restaurant with not only less hassle to dispose of the oil, but also a small economic benefit. Partner with a local farm to provide pigs food with the daily food waste. Something that Johnson & Wales implemented every single one of their labs are called pig buckets. They're these brown 5-pound buckets that are used to collect food waste. And at the end of the day, a farmer will pick them up, take them to the farm, boil them so that any toxins or however are taken out of the food. They're strained and then they're given to the pigs as food. And I believe this provides a small economic incentive as well. Not only are you able to get rid of your food waste, but you're able to provide a positive economic benefit for the restaurant and a positive benefit for the pigs. Now, transferring to a recycled paper menu or a menu alternative is something that might not be within the vision of the restaurant, but it's something that would help the sustainability overall. And trying to find something specific that could change that would change the format of the menu that wouldn't compromise necessarily the status of or general mission of the restaurant or general ambiance or feel was hard for me. I couldn't necessarily think of something, but it's an idea that could be proposed that would make the little things a little bit more sustainable. Now, moving on to economic changes, two of the environmental changes were also providing small economic benefits, but talking more economic, utilize unused indoor and outdoor space to plant herbs. The restaurant goes through this might not be an exact quantity, but an obscene amount of chives every week. So utilize unused indoor and outdoor space to grow something like chives that are being actively used in the restaurant. Herbs, small fruits or vegetables, something like that, that can be utilizing empty space and provide a benefit for the restaurant that might slightly cut down on herb and fruit costs. Further utilize cross-utilization through sustainable menu engineering. There, albeit, is a limit to how much you can engineer and how much you can provide your restaurant and your menu with without being tired and doing the same thing with the same products, even though they're being sustainable. But oh, I'm sorry, someone's phone is ringing and I thought it was mine. So apologies for that. Utilizing partner farms' bumper crops throughout the year. So if a partner farm is faced with a yield that is larger than what they expected, then if a good enough relationship is formed, then the restaurant can choose to make a deal with the farmer, buying out their excess produce at a fraction of the cost and providing the restaurant with a quick special that might provide them with more economic benefit as well as a reduced cost for the food. And then the biodiesel is an economic incentive as well. Now, moving on to this last social cultural change, it gets a little bit more interesting and nuanced as to what you can do to affect the community around you and make sure that you are being sustainable to the community. Now, increase the volume of work-related trips to partner farms and restaurants. This has proven to have a huge effect on how the servers, bartenders, front of house and back of house workers are interacting with the customers. When you have an educated staff, you have educated guests. You have educated staff who are knowledgeable about the local ingredients, knowledgeable about the local food system, and knowledgeable about the food itself. That is such a benefit to both the staff going forward in their professional careers and the guests who come in. You are providing them with information regarding where their food is coming from, how it's being made, how it's being processed, and how it got to Bayberry Garden. And not only is that a benefit to the restaurant and the culture of the people coming in, but it's a benefit to the entire food system. Your knowledge is such a powerful thing that is so easy to neglect. But in a situation like this, when there are so many partner farms available, why not take the opportunity, albeit when COVID is a little bit more relaxed, to go out into, say, a monthly field trip with the staff on a Monday and educate them on where their food in the restaurant is coming from. Offer educational series or sessions regarding sustainable wine or local ingredients, an oyster shucking demo, showcasing Rhode Island oysters coming from Jamestown, a biodynamic wine service that provides customers or guests or whomever with an increased knowledge about biodynamic wine and a slight intoxication when they leave, benefits everyone. During the patio off-season, partner with organization like Southside Community Land Trust, who provide community gardens to the community and provide gardening space for the community. While this might not necessarily be conducive to what the patio setup is now, certainly there is something to be found with the excess space that is being unused when the patio is closed. Certainly, maybe the season might not be correct for conducive growing of vegetables and fruits and produce like that. However, the space is unutilized and could be used in a creative way that might better enrich the community. Now, echoing sustainability in the Rhode Island food system, I talked about the Industrious Spirits Company offering that infused oyster spirit. Things like that Bayberry Garden is echoing out into the community saying, we are doing sustainable actions and this is how you can do it. This is why you should do it. Being sustainable is benefiting the community, it's benefiting your operation, and it benefits everyone involved. And it benefits our generations in the future, the industry in the future, and ourselves in the future. Now, wine producers that were not previously found in RI being featured by Bayberry Garden are now available to the city and state. If you're ordering a niche collector or a niche wine producer from Europe and you have a $20,000 buy-in for X amount of cases, your producer is going to be inclined to offer their services to people other operations in the area. So you're going to have biodynamic wine not only being offered at Bayberry Garden, however, you're having it being offered in other restaurants in Providence too. You are able to forge the path in terms of sustainability in wine, and you're able to show the community in Rhode Island that wine can be sustainable. Wine is sustainable, and this is why you should have sustainable wine. Not only is it sustainable, but it's good. We wouldn't be offering it if it wasn't that 1-2 punch of being sustainable and delicious. The staff's education about local ingredients from work trips helps educate guests about local options and ingredients, and partner companies are adopting cross-utilization. We talked about the ISCO company. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Bayberry Garden forging the path for sustainability in the local Providence food system. Now, our challenges to sustainability, staff mentality is something that needs to be worked on in the entire industry. If you want to implement sustainable changes to a restaurant, you have to start from the top down. When you have a leadership team that is wanting sustainability and wanting changes in the restaurant that are helping usher in an era of longevity for the future, you have an ability to change the staff's mentality. It starts from the top down. And while trickle-down economics didn't necessarily work, a top-down approach in sustainability certainly does. Building ordinances that do not allow the addition of city composting is a barrier that would be really easy to overcome under the right circumstances. But in a building like the one we're in now, it's just not conducive, so you have to find other ways around it. I mentioned one, including the pig buckets, and it's feasibly, it works, but in practice, it might not work. The building ordinances might just not be conducive to composting. And it's something as simple as that, who might be easy to overcome with another restaurant in another location. It just isn't possible. High startup costs for sustainable changes, such as featuring obscure sustainable wine producers. In my conversation with the general manager, resident sommelier Kelsey Shaw, she told me that for certain biodynamic wine producers, she had to fork out $15,000 to $20,000 for the initial buy-in to make sure that they were able to be featured because they weren't previously offered in Rhode Island in the area. It's high startup costs like that that makes sustainability sort of hard for most restaurants. But when you have a passion for biodynamic wine, when you have a passion for local food and local ingredients, when you have a passion for creating and ushering in a new era of sustainability for the restaurant industry, you make it happen. The references, of course, and to anyone watching this, I really do appreciate the time that you've taken, and I appreciate the time that you've allowed me to evaluate the restaurant, and I appreciate the ushering into the new era of sustainability in the restaurant industry, and I really do appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.